Fooladi Fitness Podcast, episode number 1. Something I've been wanting to do for quite a while now. And I'm joined by my man JD, aka the hybrid athlete, an absolute beast when it comes to all forms of different types of training, whether it's calisthenics, weightlifting, cardio, all that stuff, man. So I'm happy to have you here, man. Happy to have you come through, chop it up. Let's have a good time.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you for having me, man. Definitely been
Yes, sir.
monitoring your journey along the way as well.
Yeah, so we've been chopping it up for at least 2 years now. One of the first guys actually gave me some good advice when it comes to calisthenics, YouTube, all that stuff, man. So appreciate you pulling up. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what is a hybrid athlete to you? And let's take us on that journey of you becoming the hybrid athlete we see today.
Okay, so I would say a hybrid athlete, my definition of it is just somebody who's multifaceted, somebody who trains in a multitude of styles. And by using all those different, what I would like to call tools on a tool belt, it just makes you a better athlete in whatever your area of focus is. And I would probably say my two main areas of focus at this point in my life are calisthenics, and endurance running is like my new journey. It's like my new baby that I'm working on now. And I've been training calisthenics for 5.5 years, maybe even 6 years at this point. And, I went body weight a lot of that journey. And I just really focused on calisthenics and nutrition and just trying to get proficient at certain movements. But at a certain point, I hit somewhat of a plateau, and I needed to mix in some different things to kind of, number one, I would say keep the fulfillment and the excitement in the training. And then number two, when you add certain elements to your training, it's not going to do anything but help you with your body weight. Like, say, for instance, you start adding some weighted calisthenics, or maybe you start adding some, Olympic weightlifting movements, or you start adding in some certain endurance training techniques or plyometrics for some explosiveness. This is kind of my idea of what a hybrid athlete is. I've been training for over 20 years. And, I started off just like we were talking before we got on here, playing basketball, running track, these type of pursuits as a kid, more like games and sports. And
Athletic,
eventually it translated into me wanting to get proficient and optimize my body. So I started out with the weightlifting for a long time. And I dabbled in running a little bit in my 20s. And I just recently got into that journey. And, recently I just accomplished one of my first, I would say, goals in running. And that was doing a half a marathon.
Damn. You got everything down. You got calisthenics, weightlifting, marathons. Okay, so how did you get about into like this type of training? Like you said, you were doing basketball, you're doing track and field, but what really stuck out to you when it comes to like the hybrid style, when it comes to calisthenics, when it comes to endurance training? What really got you into that?
I would say that I've always been like an observant person over my life. Throughout my life, I've always been very observant, and I might see somebody in a gym doing a movement that I think looks cool, or I might see somebody doing, maybe I would see somebody doing something impressive athletically, and it would be something that would pique my interest. And eventually what I would end up wanting to do is like, man, how do I get to that level? How can I perform that movement? And I think I saw somebody doing a muscle up, maybe, I don't know, it might have been like,
Was it muscle up for you?
It was probably, it was like, that was the first time I really kind of thought about, I saw somebody do a muscle up in a gym when I was living in San Jose, maybe like 8-10 years ago or something like that. I never really kind of pursued it, but I used to see this dude hitting muscle ups all the time. And I was like, man, that's a cool ass movement. Like, man, I wish I would do it. And I think I tried it a couple times, and my technique was really off, and I really didn't have the strength at the time to do it. So it's like, whatever, you know what I mean? That's a dope movement. And then I ended up revisiting it down the line. And what kind of got me into calisthenics was I saw this crazy video of, I'm pretty sure you've seen this dude, Hannibal for King.
OG.
And I saw this crazy video of him doing like all types of crazy shit in New York. And it was like, man, I seen him do that. I'm like, this type of stuff doesn't even look humanly possible. I want to be able to. I want to at least try to do it. Like, look, how do I get it? How do I get involved in this to be able to do some of this stuff? And that's kind of what got me interested in the calisthenics part of it. And I think that's really what sparked my true passion for movement. Like, I've always loved sports. I've always loved staying in shape, but actually getting to the point where I got obsessive over it was when I started doing calisthenics. And it's like there's like an endless amount of progressions. And for me, all those progressions and all those little goals just keep me motivated to keep going.
Yeah, for me, it was I saw one of my friends do a handstand push-up, and I was like, I have to learn how to do that. I'm still not there yet, but it's one that's like, it was just like, you don't see that day. Someone just doing overhead press of the earth, basically. I was just like, nah, dude, I have to get that. So that's been, it's kind of similar that you saw the muscle up, and then I saw the handstand push-up, and you eventually got into calisthenics. And like once you get into calisthenics, there's so many, like you said, facets of it. There's weighted calisthenics, there's the skill training, there's the basic like street workouts and stuff like that. So what would you say is the best way to start calisthenics for a guy who is looking at these things too and is just like kind of overwhelmed? There's like skill, there's weighted calisthenics, there's the street workouts and stuff like that. What was the way you started, and what do you think is the best way to start?
Well, number one, I would say that everybody kind of starts the pursuit for different reasons. We all have our different why. You know, some people are getting into doing calisthenics because they might see somebody who has a really great physique who's doing calisthenics, and that's something that they want to emulate this guy's physique. I want to be able to look like this guy. Or somebody might see a certain movement that looks beautiful, and they say to themselves like, oh, I really want to be able to accomplish this feat of being able to perform like this on a pull-up bar. Or, you know, some people love like that freestyle calisthenics type stuff. It's not really like my thing, but you know, they see people doing all those twists and flips and all that other type of stuff, kind of like gymnastics.
True.
I want to be able to do that and learn those tricks that people do on the bar. So everybody kind of has their own why they get into the calisthenics game or why they get into fitness in general. And I would probably say that number one, before you even get into any of the destinations that you might want to get into, the physique, being able to do handstand push-ups, being able to do 360 spins on the bar, whatever it may be, or being able to do 50 pull-ups in a row or whatever, or being able to do a 200-pound dip. The number one thing that you need to do is lay down a foundation of fundamentals. And I would say that's where everybody needs to start from step one. And I would say that's the route that I went. And, you know, I just wanted to build my fundamentals up. I don't think that you can actually advance in calisthenics if you don't have a solid base of fundamentals. And for me, probably the big three movements would be pull-ups, push-ups, and dips. And specifically pull-ups and dips, in my opinion. Like, I think push-ups are great, but as far as like progressing in calisthenics, like dips are a way more important movement, and pull-ups for sure is like, I mean, I don't think there is any movement that represents calisthenics more than a pull-up. So if you want to be able to get to the point where you can do handstand push-ups, if you want to get to the point where you can do front levers, planches, muscle ups, whatever it may be, you have to solidify those three movements right there. And if you want to have a complete balance in your body, you're going to have to make sure that you do some form of leg training as well, even if it's just body weight squats or body weight lunges or whatever it may be. But eventually you're going to want to try to optimize that as well. And in my opinion, you want to add some weights, add some plyometrics, do some endurance running, whatever it may be.
And so that base foundation, how long did it take you to get that base foundation? Because a lot of people obviously want to shortcut, get straight to the skills and stuff like that. What do you think is the best way to like ensure that you get that foundation, so when you get into the skill work, when you get into the physique stuff, that your foundation is solid enough, you don't just crumble, you get injuries, you just burn out and stuff like that?
Yeah, I think everybody's starting off at a different level as well. Like, you got people who come into calisthenics and they were already athletes before, or you got people who come into calisthenics who, you know, who had already had previous experience weightlifting. Like you were just talking about my boy James, the Jack dude, and James started off calisthenics after he was already an elite Olympic weightlifter. He was like an elite weightlifter in Hawaii. He holds like 6 Hawaii state records in Olympic weightlifting. And, you know, for him, he got into calisthenics. And of course, because of his level of athleticism coming into it, he was already at a higher level than maybe somebody who'd been training calisthenics for 2 years. So it really just depends on where you're at when you start off doing calisthenics. But I would say overall for fitness in general, you know, you want to make sure that you're proficient. I would say we're just talking about calisthenics, I would say a good base of proficiency for, you know, fundamentals or laying down a foundation would be, number one, you need to focus on your form. So range of motion is extremely important. And I know starting off, you're probably not, you know, most people aren't going to be able to be perfect with their form. So that's the unrealistic expectations. And, you know, I've never been somebody to be like the form police and being like, oh, dude, oh, that doesn't count, whatever. You know, everybody's at their own level. So don't pay attention to the people who are being extremely negative. Because one thing I've noticed about people who are extremely negative when it comes down to other people's journey is that they're usually at a plateau that they're probably never going to be able to get out of. You know, I noticed that when I kind of started off calisthenics, and, you know, maybe some people critique the way that I did pull-ups, or they critique that I kipped too much on my muscle ups, or they critique my range of motion when I was first starting off. And to me, there's really no room for that type of negativity when, you know, it's like comes from a malicious standpoint. I can understand it's definitely helpful when people give you, you know, constructive criticism on what you're doing and give you, you know, maybe some ways that you can do it better. But when it's just a matter of like shit talking and bashing, I think that's something that you kind of need to block out. And it's really important for anybody starting off their fitness journey to just understand that you have people like that, but you really don't need to pay any attention to them. Just focus on improving incrementally, you know, more range of motion, more reps, more cleaner sets. These are things that you need to work on. And I highly recommend, if you're starting off, even if you're not starting a YouTube channel or an Instagram or anything like that, film your workouts. You know, strange. And, you know, a lot of people might see people filming workouts and they think, oh, this person's self-absorbed or whatever it may be. But in all reality, I film almost every single set that I do, especially on movements that I'm working on and trying to perfect. And the reason why I do it is not because I post every single set that I'm doing. You know, I work out every single day and I don't post that much, but I film every single day. And the reason why I do it is because I want to make sure that I'm doing the movement correctly. And I think that we can even catch some of the flaws in our technique and some of the flaws in our form if we go back and look at the game tape, as I like to call it.
Yeah. Gives you that feedback. Like nothing else really gives you that feedback. Like, of course, if you have a training partner, they tell you you're not doing something right. But once you see yourself doing it, you're just like, okay, like now it makes sense of like why certain movements don't feel as good, why it's not as clean. So 100%, like when I started recording myself, like you can really see flaws, because naturally humans, like we look at our flaws the most, especially when it comes to like visual things. So when it comes to working out and you want that stuff, but you don't want to get too attached to it where you're just like, oh, like I have to have the cleanest, most perfect rep, because what you said is really, really key in fitness and just general in life. I feel like before you worry so much about quality, you got to get in like the reps. You got to get that quantity in. Like you're not going to get the best push-up just off doing one rep every single day. You got to do 10 reps, 7 of them are good, 3 of them are shitty, but you learn how to get those three reps that were shitty better on after you just keep banging out the reps. So that's a really good point that you made there. And it's a lot of people I can tell that get into fitness have that perfectionism mindset. And when it comes to like calisthenics, if you want to get into skills and stuff like that, you're going to fail so many times. Like it's ridiculous. Probably the most out of any like resistance training, I would say calisthenics you're going to fail the most because it's so demanding on your body. So you got to have that mental capacity to be able to get that constructive criticism from people around you, you're recording, and just take it all in, but not get too attached to it, to understand that it takes time, and you eventually will get to the point that you want to get to, but you're not going to get there overnight, and it's probably going to take longer than even things like weightlifting and stuff because of just the nature of calisthenics.
Yeah, and I would say that another thing to keep in mind as well is like I actually just got finished doing a live stream on my channel about
Oh,
this.
really? Yeah. Back to back.
Yeah, and it was more so I was talking to James, actually. Me and him were doing it, and it was about having big goals versus small goals. And one of the things that I think is extremely important is you can have lofty goals when it comes down to fitness, but you need to make sure that you have a bunch of small goals that you're actively working on.
Yeah, you break that big goal down.
Exactly, because those small goals are going to compound into bigger goals anyways. And you guys can, if you guys check out my channel, you guys can go to, like, if I don't know if YouTube lets you do this anymore, but you can go to my oldest video. If you check out just some of my oldest videos from when I first started doing calisthenics, and none of that stuff, in my opinion, is very impressive at all. And my form wasn't very great, but I'm glad that I actually documented all that stuff because it's actually something that people can look back on and say like, oh, this dude's at this level right now. And you go back and look at 5 years from now, it's like, man, I'm doing better, workouts than that, so you can think to yourself, it's going to take time. You know what I mean? It's going to take time. Like, I know a lot of people get into calisthenics and they want to do some, a handstand push-up to me is something that's feasible and it's reasonable, right? As far as like, okay, I want to get into calisthenics. I want to learn this movement. It's something that's not necessarily so far away that you're going to get too discouraged. But there's a lot of people who come into calisthenics and they're saying, oh, I want to be able to do a full planche or planche push-ups, or I want to be able to do front lever pull-ups. There's actually somebody in a live stream that actually said that that's their goal, is to do front lever pull-ups. But one thing to understand about a goal that lofty, big goals, is that you have to understand that something like front lever pull-ups or a planche push-ups or something like that, this could be a goal that takes 5 years. And if you're not
5 is minimum. Yeah.
It could take minimum 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, who knows? And if you're not willing to put in the work over the time to actually get there, you almost have to not even think about the planche. Like, the entire time I've been doing calisthenics, the planche wasn't even something that was even on my radar, to be completely honest with you. I only started training the planche like last year, just because one of my friends in Brazil was telling me like, man, you're strong enough to start training planche. Like, you have to start training. And I was telling him, I'm like, I'm 6 feet tall. I'm too tall to do the planche. And he was just like, nah, that's just an excuse. Like, you need to start training the planche. So I started training it, and eventually I got the straddle planche, started doing straddle planche push-ups, and now I'm working on doing the full planche, and I'll probably have that pretty soon as well. So, but the things that take a long time, and you have to like focus on all these smaller goals that are right in front of you before you start worrying about these goals that are like way down the line. Yeah. Keep those bigger goals in your subconscious, but in your right in front of you, in the in your conscious mind, you need to be worried about, okay, what do I need to do? What task do I need to accomplish this week?
And there's something about having those big goals in the subconscious that I noticed, that when you consciously think about that huge goal, it just looks way too far away, and it's easy to just give up once you like get into it, and you're just like, damn, bro, I do not think I can get this in 5 years, even, because it just looks so far away. But when you have that in the back of your mind and you're slowly building up with like smaller goals, let's say you get a heavy weighted dip, and then you can start getting into handstands, and you get into handstand push-ups, all those things build up, and you get to that level where you can, like the guy said, you're strong enough to start training the planche, but you didn't even think about it the entire time. So you just kept building up, and then that the door kind of unlocked for you because you put in all that work, but you weren't so attached to it. Like, you got to get the planche by 5 years. Like, you just were going out throughout your life training, and in 5 years you got the ability to unlock the planche without really even thinking about it. So that's some really good advice, to just even in life in general, I say, that you just get.
It just comes down to just focusing on the journey versus focusing on the actual end goal. because really, to be honest with you, when it comes down to life, in my opinion, there really is no end goal. Like, what is your end goal in life? And when you get to that goal, are do you want to just die after that point? Like, if you accomplish whatever you want to accomplish in life, is that the end of it? No, our life is not. It's not like something that's static. Our life is dynamic. It's our goals change constantly. Our perspective in life changes constantly, and we can always grow in some area because we're never going to know it all. We're never going to accomplish it all. So that's the beauty of life, is that these things are always moving. It's like your goals are like a goalpost that's constantly getting moved all the time.
Yep.
So and it's getting moved further and further back because you get to that goalpost, and then all of a sudden you have a new goal that gets pushed further back. That
it gets even harder. Yeah.
In life. So I think that's like something to look at in terms of calisthenics and just kind of going with the flow. But also there's also value to having structure and wanting to get to a certain place by a certain time as well, because it kind of lights a fire under us, and it kind of gives us a little bit more initiative to put in the work. But I would say finding a balance between the two is really where it's at in life and in calisthenics, or life and in training.
And speaking on that, putting in the work, there's something pretty unique that you do that I don't see a lot of people do in fitness. Like, I don't do it myself. Is you work out daily, 7 days a week. So you probably, even today, you're going to go work out. But is it that you're doing resistance training every day? Or is it that you're doing some form of movement? Because I would say I do some form of movement every day, whether it's going on walks and this and that. But I'm not doing weighted pull-ups, weighted dips, this and that, like every single day. Like every single day I would do 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups, just quick workout. But do you get a strict workout in every single day, or is it just something that you're trying to get in some form of movement?
I would say I recommend to everybody to do some form of movement every day. But for myself, I actually do like a strict workout.
Damn, really? Every day?
And depending on what it is, like today, Sundays are probably a little bit more relaxed for me as far as like resistance training. But the thing is, on Sundays, I also do like a very long run every Sunday. Like, I'm getting ready to go for it. As soon as we're done with this, I'm going to go on a 10-mile run. And this is like probably my more relaxed day of the week when it comes down to resistance training. But I'm still going to do some muscle ups today. I'm still going to probably get in some handstands and maybe work on some planks or whatever. Just not as long, maybe do an hour of workout opposed to doing a couple hours like I usually do on a daily basis. And then I'm going to get that, hour and a half long run in, and I'm going to be running some hills today. So for me, the body adapts over time in any way. So that's one thing that people don't really, I think a lot of people have this misinformation on that the body needs X amount of rest. Like what is rest if you really think about it? What is time and what is rest when it comes down to I need to take 2 days off per week. For me, I probably sleep 8 hours per night on average. So, which is probably maybe 2 or 3 more hours average than the average person. Sleep is when our body recovers the most anyway. So I'm getting more recovery in that good 8 hours of sleep. And if you're not drinking alcohol, you're not over consuming caffeine, you're not, doing drugs that are affecting your sleep, your body's going to regenerate itself. Another thing I like to do is intermittent fasting, which also helps with my recovery. And then I do active forms of recovery, like take the massage gun, massage my body, foam rolling, mobility work. And in general, your body's going to adapt to the training frequency and the training volume that you give it anyways. So my body pretty much feels fresh almost every single day. Like every so often I feel like some fatigue, or, my body will feel a little, I might have a nagging little injury here or there, but that's something that I experienced before when I used to train 5 days per week. It's something that I experienced when I was training 4 days per week. It's something that I experienced when I used to train 6 days per week. So the body will pretty much adapt to anything that you give it. It's just but for me, it's more of a mental approach than it is anything that has to do with the physical. Because I think I look at training and I look at just everything we do in life as a way to create momentum. And you can either create positive momentum or you can create negative momentum. There is really no such thing as staying the same in life. You're either getting worse or you're getting better. So for me, I always look at, if I keep my momentum going with my training 7 days per week, I'm constantly getting better. I'm communicating with my body every single day because I'm constantly doing the same movements over and over again. And I'm telling my body that these movements are important to me. So I need to be able to complete these movements. So by me doing it every single day, my body's taking note of that. My mind is taking note of that. And those movement patterns just get locked in to the point where they start becoming easy for you.
Mm-hmm. So would you say for people getting into calisthenics, they should do this as well, or just get into training? Or is it something that you've built up over time? You've built up the muscle tissue resiliency to handle some movements 7 days a week?
I always would say that you should do something active every single day. But I would also say that nobody's journey is the same. You can't follow my blueprint exactly and get to where I got to in life, because I've had so many different, like my mindset is different than the next man's mindset. Your mindset is different than the next man's mindset. So what's going through our brain while we're training is completely different. So I would say I do recommend 7 days per week movement, but for somebody who's just starting off calisthenics, 7 days per week movement might mean 2 days you just go on a 30-minute walk, or 2 days you just do maybe 15 minutes of jump rope. And one day you might go for a 2-mile run. So to me, it looks different for everybody. And then the other days, what you might do as your full workout might be, your warm-up workout. You know what I mean? Because it might be something that's so easy. You said 50 pull-ups and 100 push-ups, like that's just some easy little task. But somebody who's getting into calisthenics, 50 pull-ups, 100 push-ups is like, man, that's something that they can't even think about doing in a day. Like it takes them like 3 days to complete those numbers. So you got to think about it like that. Do some form of movement every day, whatever your body can handle, and slowly increase after that. And then through that progressive overload, so to speak, your body's going to adapt. And eventually, you look up 2 years from now and all the stuff you are doing right now is going to look like child's play.
Yeah, facts. Now, something you said that helps your recovery is intermittent fasting. I do that too, and I know that you've done it for a while throughout your videos. You've talked about it. So let's break it down, how not only the physical effects, but like the mental and even spiritual effects about fasting, like long fasting and intermittent fasting as well.
Yeah, so I look at fasting as like a form of cleansing, at least from a spiritual and like a mental perspective, is because I like to consider myself somewhat of a minimalist in life. And I try to simplify everything that I have in life, because I think that a lot of times we make things a little bit too complex, and our body is the same way. Like we can be mental minimalists. We can be minimalist when it comes down to food, and we can be minimalist when it comes down to having too many items, material items. And when it comes down to food, consuming food can almost become a full-time job when you're eating like 3, 4, some people are even eating like 6 meals per day. That's just too much time to be thinking about what you're putting in your body for fuel, in my opinion. And it just takes up too much mental space. So from a mental perspective, you're constantly thinking about food opposed to constantly thinking about the things that you need to be doing per day that are actually going to, help you progress or help you grow in one area or another. And the fact of the matter is, like, you can still get the same amount of caloric intake in a smaller eating window as you can in a larger eating window. And from a spiritual perspective, cleansing the body is something that, in fasting is something that people have been doing for thousands of years. So this isn't anything that any, YouTuber or anything that some, fitness influencer made up in the recent years. This is a practice that's been going on for years and years and years. And it gives, for me, and I'm sure for yourself as well, I feel the most sharp mentally when I'm in a fasted state. And let's just say, for instance, I'm going through something, my body automatic, like something spiritually is on my mind. My body automatically is going to have less of an appetite because there's more things that I need to think about and more things that I need to process on from a spiritual and mental perspective than to be, putting myself in a state of, I would say, like, when you eat, it gives you a sense of like, searching for the word right now, but it gives you a sense of like there's nothing left to accomplish. I don't really need to think about anything.
You're not hungry, yeah. You're like not
I'm not
mentally
hungry.
yeah, physically,
It's time to relax.
yeah,
And when you're,
yeah.
you know what I mean. And like for me, that's the reason why I always like to start my days off in a fasted state, because you're still kind of going after it and still getting after it. So that's more so like part of the reason why I like to fast. There's a ton of physical benefits as well when it comes down to intermittent fasting, as far as like burning fat, creating, boosting your human growth hormone, improving your digestion system. Just there's a ton of repairing your cells, autophagy. There's a ton of different benefits when it comes down to fasting. I would say that once you get to like a full day's fast and longer, though, it's more of a mental and spiritual thing from that standpoint. And I think it's good to push ourselves mentally. I think that's something that the majority of society, especially here in America, we don't do a lot of pushing ourselves. We don't have a lot of mental strength in this country. So if you're somebody who is finding different ways to improve your mental strength, I think that's an important thing to add into your repertoire or add onto your tool belt.
So another thing I want to talk about is, like, we got into spirituality and stuff like that when it comes to fasting, but let's talk about the spiritual side or aspect of calisthenics, because I've noticed as getting into calisthenics and stuff like that, it's kind of like unlocking your body, so your soul, I don't know how to say it, your soul kind of like has freedom to use this body however way it wants. And like things like the weightlifting, while I still do it, I still like mix it in because like I'm doing the hybrid training as well, kind of locks you into certain movement patterns and stuff like that. You don't really get to fully like feel and express your body like things like calisthenics and like gymnastics and even running does. So what has been your experience so far with that?
For me, I think like at least the difference between calisthenics is like in like weightlifting, I would say, if we're just comparing those two things in particular, is that there's almost an unlimited amount of ways that you can maneuver your body when it comes down to calisthenics, because you're really just basically finding different ways to create resistance with your body and finding different positions and different movements to do with your body, opposed to, like you said, weightlifting is more about how far can you take it as far as building pure strength. And I think there's something to both of those things, to be completely honest with you. I don't think one of them is necessarily superior to the other. But one thing I like about calisthenics is like it's an inner practice that is like mental and physical at the same time. And it's like it's an inner practice that manifests itself physically. So it really takes a lot of mind muscle connection to be able to do something like a 90-degree handstand push-up. But then it manifests itself physically by being a beautiful movement, or all these compounding effects that we do as far as training daily to, get our reps and sets in. It manifests into ourselves having a more impressive physique than we did maybe a year ago before we started training, or whatever it may be. So that's one of the things I love about calisthenics. And, honestly, one of the things I've actually been noticing lately is that once certain movements start to get a little bit easier, it doesn't become a pursuit on how do I make the handstand push-up easy. It becomes a pursuit on how do I make the handstand push-up more difficult.
Yeah.
So that's actually another thing that I actually really like about calisthenics as well. And I guess you could say the same thing for weightlifting, but it's really just kind of like putting
more weight on the bar. Yeah.
It's a little bit less creative, I would say, it's more creativity involved in calisthenics than there is maybe in terms of like weightlifting. But they're both impressive athletic feats, and I definitely like doing both of them. And I'm actually kind of getting a little bit more into the weightlifting thing too. But I think calisthenics is always going to be like my main focus and my bread and butter. At least that's what I feel like now, because I'm also really into the running as well. So that's another thing. Running is probably, to me, is like the most challenging mentally, because you're really challenging your willpower more so than you are challenging your actual. I think there's an element of it that comes down to weightlifting, but there's definitely more willpower involved in running, because it's almost all mental, really. I mean, there's a physical component to it as well, but it's very mental. You're almost playing mind games with yourself in the entire time that you're actually doing a run.
Any type of like long distance cardio, I feel like that. Like I used to like go to a beach, and there's like a huge buoy out there, like way far out there, and I would go at night to like psych my mental even more. And bro, so many mind games happen in your head, just like, oh bro, I'm gonna drown. Oh bro, there's a sharks under me. Oh, there's that. And when you're running, it's like like my knees are gonna give out, bro. I can't do this, like this and that. So you gotta fight that like side of you that, like, you made the point that in America, Western countries, like people don't push themselves, so you're so stuck in that type of mindset that these things, like, you have to break through, or you're not gonna finish that run. You're not gonna finish that swim. So it's really training that side of your brain to like not listen to all the chatter and just stay focused on the mission and just complete it. So that is 100% something I've noticed from all different types of form of like long distance like cardio. It's even if you're not sprinting, it's like still your brain is like telling you to stop, and it's like stop. But your willpower is like you're building that up, and you can consider that even a muscle that you don't really get from too many things like weightlifting. I wouldn't even say with calisthenics and stuff like that, but I personally don't run as much as probably I should, but every time I do, I feel that 100%.
I mean, there's seasons in life for all these things, to be honest with you. I always look at it as like, this is one of my seasons is me incorporating running into it. But like, I'm not exactly sure how old you are, but I'm 37 years old. So
no way.
Yeah, I'm 37, so I'm about to be 38 this year. So
no way. Actually, there's no way.
Yeah, no,
this good shape and that good shape and being able to do that's nuts. That is,
and that's another.
I would think like 30 max.
Yeah, that's another mental limitation that a lot of people have as well.
Age,
age. So maybe somebody who's 30 years old is looking at calisthenics and they're like, I'm too old to get into it. Or there's probably people that are 25 years old, 20 years old that think they're too old to get into something just because they have the mentality of like, oh, if I wasn't proficient at something at 18 years old and I wasn't a star basketball player, whatever it may be, then, it's too late for me. But I guess for myself, it was more from a curiosity standpoint of wanting to try out these different movements. And then it ended up being a point where it's like, I want to see how far I can take it. I want to see how far I can push my body. And like, age really is honestly one of those things where people give it way too much power, because even though I'm 37, like I rarely even think about the fact that I'm 37 years old, because number one, I don't move like and I don't even think 37 is really that old, to be honest with you. Yeah. People kind of have the mentality that 37 is like some old number, but it's really just a young person.
Well, I mean, here, because you see 37-year-olds that are in like wheelchairs already. Like,
yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of people
handstand push-ups like you.
Yeah, a lot of people don't take care of themselves, and I think that's another problem in society, is that everything is too easily accessible, and we're too comfortable here. So most people don't want to get outside of their comfort zone. They don't want to spend time cooking a meal. They rather just go through a drive-through. They don't want to spend time actually putting some work in to work out. They'd rather just, figure out another way to get whatever they want out of life, because there's an endless supply of pleasure in the society. And
instant gratification, yeah.
And if you just become a pleasure junkie, then, it's like a snowball effect. And before you know it, you're like a drug addict that just needs more and more and more and more and more. And you're never going to be fulfilled by all the stimulation that you can get, because there's an endless supply of stimulation. And, an overdose on that just means that, mentally you're going to be fractured at that point.
Mm-hmm. Now, kind of like going off that point, I wouldn't say this is one of those things, but I would say, a travel junkie, actually. So is that something, like, let's talk about how the exploring new parts of the world changes your perspective and stuff. Like, I haven't traveled too much, but I feel like every time I have, like, I've only gone out of the country like once, and you get like a whole different like data set, I would say, like in a whole different like understanding of how the world works. And as someone who's 37 with a lot of wisdom, a lot of knowledge about just life in general, how much do you think travel played a part into that?
Man, travel has been definitely an integral part in like my growth and development.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that everybody who goes out and travels for different reasons. And I think maybe some of my reasons for traveling when I was younger was completely different than the reasons why I travel now.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't really think that there's anything wrong with any of the reasons why people travel. Some people travel to have fun and party. Some people travel because they want to experience different cultures. Some people travel because they're looking for a new home. Some people travel because they're really into one particular aspect of life and they want to experience that in other places. Like, there's a lot of people who I know who travel just to eat. Like, they literally love food so much that they're just like, I want to try these different foods and all these different cultures. And that's a reason to travel as well. So for me, I would probably say my travel journey started out more of like a fun thing. And it was like, I want to just go experience, partying over here. I want to go experience like my travel. I used to have like a list of different things I like to do every place I went when I was like in my 20s. Like, I want to try some different food. I want to go to some clubs. I want to meet some women when I travel. I want to experience, maybe go to a couple of sightseeing things. And like, after that, I'm good on that place and I'm moving on to the next. So that was kind of like my mindset when I was like first started off my international traveling, like in my mid 20s. And then it kind of formed into like, oh, well, let me develop some connections. And I actually ended up starting a business in Japan. And I lived in Japan for like 3 years. And that was kind of like my real introduction to like really experiencing another culture, because it wasn't me going on a trip for like 2 weeks. It was me actually living someplace, learning a language, learning a culture, learning how to conduct myself, kind of changing my own mindset and like the way I actually interact with people and the way I carry myself changed a lot when I actually moved to Japan. And that was around the time I was like 29 years old. And I changed a lot then. And then, I probably when you first saw my channel was when I was living in Hawaii, and Hawaii was a whole nother experience for myself. Probably one of my favorite places in the world. And that changed me a lot as well. And since Hawaii, I've kind of been on the move for about a year and a half. Brazil,
all over the place. Yeah.
Argentina. I was in Egypt, Israel, Europe, Japan again, Taiwan most recently for about 3 months. And so my travel the past year and a half actually has not been just simply traveling without a purpose. I've actually been looking for a new location to plant some roots. So that's actually been my reason for traveling. And actually, I've actually mentioned this on a couple of videos recently, is that I'm actually kind of tired of traveling, to be completely honest with you. Like, I'm more so looking for a place where I can kind of settle down, because I feel like I've been to over 30 countries. I've experienced a lot of different things. It's not that I never want to travel again. It's just that I don't want to spend my time on like a nomadic pursuit. I'd like to actually open up a brick and mortar gym and create more community. That's one thing I love about traveling as well. I know I'm going all over the place, but there's so many different things to talk about it. But like, I want to create a community and actually grow my community in one spot, opposed to something that I've been doing the past few years. And that's been being a part of different communities in different locations. So that's one of the beauties about calisthenics as well, because it all kind of ties in together, is that one thing I do now, opposed to when I was younger, is that when I go to different places, I usually stay for about a month. most of the time. And usually what I do is the first place I go is to calisthenics parks, because that's what I love to do. I like to go to cafes and I like to go to calisthenics parks. And when I go to these places, that's where I find my community at. So most of my friends in the places I've been traveling over the last year and a half, 2 years, they've all been into calisthenics. They've all had similar interests to me. So I've been creating these communities, or I haven't been creating, I've been being a part of these communities all over the globe. And I've created this global community of friends that I have that all have similar interests and all are like-minded. And you'd be surprised. You just end up finding people who kind of click with you, and it just happens naturally. So, and you learn a lot from these people. You learn a lot about their culture. You learn a lot about, their way of life. You learn a lot about, different places. It's almost like a fast track to getting to know a place, to be honest with you, because they're kind of coming from the same perspective as you, and they can kind of give you recommendations on what to do in their country. So I'm definitely enjoying that, but I'd like to do that myself. And, I'm kind of still trying to figure out exactly where I want to do it at. I've been thinking about settling in Taiwan. That's one place. Taipei is a really, really dope spot. But then I've also kind of been thinking about coming back home to California and maybe opening a gym here and maybe starting a life here and having this be my base. So travel is definitely a dope thing, and you're definitely going to learn a lot traveling. I just think that everybody has a different reason for starting off traveling, but I think it's just like calisthenics. You might have a reason for starting off calisthenics, and then eventually your reason to stay in the calisthenics is something completely different. It's like your passion for it completely changed, and it morphed into something else. That the journey took you on a different route than you actually ended up anticipating to begin with.
What would you say is like some good tips for people trying to get into traveling? Because you've been all over the place. You said 30 countries and that, like, it's kind of, and you've been going solo for most of it. Yeah. So what are some like mistakes you've made along the way, and what are some tips you would give?
I mean, one thing is you're going to make mistakes every time you go someplace new, for sure. That just comes with the territory. Like, traveling is not something that's easy. Like, you're going to have mistakes that you make. Something's going to go wrong. Like, it happens every single time, every single place I go. You're going to lose something. You're going to get lost. You're not going to know how to communicate with people. Depending on what country you're in, you're going to get charged the foreigner price for something when you pay way more for something than you should pay for it. But that just comes with the territory. And you kind of just got to chalk that up as an L. And when I say an L, it's a learning experience. So that's kind of like my number one piece of advice for traveling. But I would say, do a little bit of research, learn some of the language. Like, don't go someplace thinking that people are supposed to speak English. Like, that's probably the biggest mistake that when I see people who have that mentality of like, when they're traveling, they think everybody's supposed to acquiesce to them or everybody's supposed to accommodate them because they're an American. That's where a lot of Americans get that bad reputation of like having that super entitlement complex. Like, they start yelling at people in English, like as if that's going to make them understand them. So keep your Google Translate on. Make sure that you learn at least how to say hello, thank you. And if you can learn how to say where questions like how do I get here, or where is this, or something like that. If you can, keep that much information in your brain, that's going to be very helpful as well. Always keep track of the currency rates for sure, just so you can kind of know exactly how much you're paying for things. Because a lot of times when you go to these countries like Brazil or Argentina or, wherever it may be, you might think that you're not spending a lot of money. And then next thing you know, you look at your credit card bill or you look at your your bank account or whatever, and you're like, damn, I spent this much money. It's like, yeah, because you were looking at it in their currency and you thought it was all good. So that's another tip. And I'll probably say, find somebody local who can, make a friend, whether that's like, if you're somebody who's a single man and you meet, like, when I was younger, I did a lot of dating overseas. So for me, I would always meet like some young lady, like almost as soon as I got to a place, and like she would pretty much be my tour guide. And as I got older, I would meet like people at calisthenics parks, or people who are, who just people who have similar interests in me, who can kind of like teach me things about their culture, teach me things about where I was at. And also a good thing is they can teach you the language as well. So I would do that. Make sure that you have Google Translate. Get a SIM card. Have a cell phone that's unlocked, so that way every single country you go to, you can get a SIM card to where your phone is fully functional. That's probably the first thing I do every single time I just get to an airport. Even if I'm paying a little bit more for phone service, I make sure that I have my phone service, because that's the thing that you're going to need in case of an emergency. You're going to need to be able to contact your people back home. You're going to be able to need to, call the authorities. Learn. This is another thing that I think is underrated. It's like emergency calls are not 911 everywhere in the world. So learn what that emergency number is. Like in Taiwan, it was 119. I think another place I was at this year was like 114. I like learn that's like one of the first things I want to learn when I get someplace. So just in case something goes wrong, you want to make sure that you can get the help needed. And like I said, the cell phone, the funny thing about cell phone service in other countries is way cheaper in America. Like, I don't know how much you paying for your plan, but out here it's like, I don't know, mine is like $100 per month or something like that. But when I go overseas, it's like I can get a month's worth of data in phone service for like $15-$20. The only place I probably spent more than that was Israel. That was like $75, and everything there is super expensive. So, but yeah.
What are your so far your favorite places that you've gone to and like you want to go back to?
I would say top 5. I would definitely say, and this is not in any particular order, this is just off the top of my head, Buenos Aires, Argentina is like definitely one of my favorite places for sure. Buenos Aires is definitely, that's my favorite place in South America for sure. And I would say Taipei, Taiwan is one of my favorite places for sure. I mean, I might have recency bias with that just because I was just there, and like it's a place that I'm actually thinking about moving to. So any place that I would like to live is a place that I love for sure. Hawaii is definitely top. That's easily top 5, if not number 1, to be completely honest with you. And then, and that's in our own home soil. That's in the United States. So Hawaii is definitely one of my favorite places. Just beautiful, green, lush. The lifestyle there is super relaxing, especially if you're living there. It's like one thing to go there as a tourist, but for me, I lived there for like 4.5 years. So it's like you can literally spend your entire day outside. And like the sunsets there are phenomenal. If you're somebody like, I like to surf, so surfing is definitely
okay. That's dope.
Surfing is definitely something that I would like to get back into, to be honest with you. But Hawaii spoils you with the waves and just the water and everything like that. So it's been something where it's like I don't want to get into cold water and surf. I don't want to wear wets. But I would definitely say Hawaii. I think that's 3 right there. And I would say, man, where else would I say? It's probably like Japan is always. I love Japan too because of
anywhere specific.
I would say that explore all of Japan, because it's the different regions are different. Like Osaka is where I lived at, but to be completely like fair and like to be fair, I would say that Tokyo is actually a better city. But although I loved Osaka because I had like my community there, you know what I mean? But also, I'm trying to think about some other places I've been. I mean, I've been to some super dope places. Like Brazil is tight, although it's not in my top 5. Like there's certain places that are great to visit. Like Egypt was it was like a very two-sided place for me, because on one hand, it was one of the most amazing places I've ever been in my life when it comes down to how rich the history is there. And just the pyramids are just amazing to look at. Like some of this stuff that you see at these temples, you go to Luxor, and like how this stuff has just been preserved for thousands of years, and like the mummies.
Trippy.
And it's like, it's just a trip. Like you said, it's like, that's probably the place that I saw that was like the most rich, and it came down to like history and like just amazement. Like I was just in awe of everything. Every day was something amazing that I saw. But then on the other side, it was a place that I could never live. It was because like one of the most polluted places I've ever been. Tons of people everybody thought I was Egyptian, so they weren't really messing with me too much. But if you see, my girlfriend is Asian, so when we were out there, it's like they were just trying to scam her nonstop, and they were just bothering her, harassing her the whole time. So it was like a little bit, for me, it really wasn't that bad, but for her, she was just definitely having a hard time. So it affected my trip as well. And but yeah, so I would say Egypt is like definitely a dope place, but then it's also like the food isn't very good there, in my opinion. You know, no disrespect to any Egyptian people out there, but I definitely wasn't on the food too much. But but then the history is just crazy. It's amazing, and I just had a really good trip.
Top 5 or no?
Yeah, I would have to say Egypt is a place that I feel like everybody has to go. I would definitely.
Hawaii, Japan, Egypt, and it was Buenos Aires.
Yeah, Buenos Aires for sure. Yeah.
And what was the last one?
I would say Taipei, but then it's just it's hard. It's hard to, because then I really had a good time when I was in Jordan as well, and Israel. Like I had a good time in all these places for different. Jordan was like, there's a place called Petra out there that's like one of the like wonders of the world, because like this city built into a mountain, and that was a dope experience for me too. But I would probably say the place I liked the most in Jordan was this desert experience that we went. We went out to the desert and spent the night out in the desert in this place called Wadi Rum, and like, man, it was just the red sand and the mountains out in the middle of the desert, and just the sunsets and the sunrises, and just being able to see the stars. It was just one of those experiences that I'll never forget in my life. So So I would definitely say, like, man, all these places, there's gems all over the world. Like there's an unlimited. That's the reason why it's so dope to be an explorer, is that there's literally an endless. I could definitely spend the rest of my life traveling, but I'm just coming to a point now where it's like, okay, I do want to have a family, and I do want to like start something like brick and mortar, and not necessarily be living a nomadic life. But it's definitely enough stuff on this earth to keep you occupied on like discovering new things and finding new gems all over the place. And there's probably a bunch of places that I'll go to in the future that will trump some of the experiences I've had in the past.
That's true. Yeah. So now with all those experiences with like calisthenics, fitness, traveling, this and that, what are 3 to 5 things that you would like to say to your younger self that you wish you had, like some of this advice, like you wish someone told you this?
I would say I'm not really a person who lives my life on regrets.
So, not regret, more like like give you the game.
I'm just saying, like, I probably kind of would have liked to experience everything the way that I did, but but I would say that if I wanted to expedite my progress in certain things, I would tell myself, number one, don't be in a rush. Don't be in a rush, because especially if you're a younger person, like in your early 20s or something like that, like you have so much, time is not guaranteed, but at the same time, you have way more leeway. So not being as accomplished in certain things, like take your time and get proficient at something. Like, even if it doesn't give you the instant results that you want. Like one of the things that I had a problem with when I was younger is that I just had this like poverty mindset because of where I come from. And like, I'm not saying I come from poverty, but I do come from more of like a lower blue collar type of area. And my mindset was always like, oh, I need to chase money. I need to make money. Like I need to do whatever I need to do to make money. Money is it should be the least of your, like, that shouldn't be something that you're really tripping off of in your 20s or your early 20s and your teens and stuff like that. You need to work on getting a skill set and work on getting proficient at the things that you're passionate about. And I think I wish I would have spent more time doing that. Like I went to university, I played basketball my first year and a half in college. And then eventually I went to San Francisco State University and got a degree in broadcasting. And I actually ended up getting a job working for the Golden State Warriors broadcast department. They offered me a job after my internship, but because it didn't pay a lot of money, I turned that job down and got a job working for an airline because it paid more money. That was like one of the dumber things I did, like, because, and at the same time I did need the money, but at the same time it's like, do I want to go into a craft or do I want to get a job that pays something? It wasn't me thinking long term. You know what I mean? So, but granted, it led me on to this whole other journey of traveling and doing things like that. So definitely not complaining about it. But if you're interested in something, don't think about the money. Think about building up that skill set first. When it comes down to fitness, don't be scared of sucking at something at first. And don't worry about what everybody else is saying. Because you don't want to be like everybody else. Like, if you really think about it, being in the top 1% of a field really isn't even that impressive. Like, you can go outside today and just go take a look at 100 people that you pass by and just ask yourself, do you want to be like any of these 100 people that you see? And you're probably going to tell yourself, would you rather be one of them other than more so than yourself? You're probably going to tell yourself, no, I'd rather be me than these 100 people. I mean, really, technically, you should want to be you more than anybody else. But just in terms of, you wouldn't even think that these people are even as impressive as you, because the majority of people walking around are dead average to subpar. So don't worry about what they have to say. Just focus on whatever it is that you're interested in, and that you want to do. Be you. Don't worry about what everybody else is saying, even if you feel like you're going to get some backlash from it. And probably the main thing there's a lot of mentalities that took a long time for me to break through. And self-limiting beliefs, I would say, is probably the number one thing that I would try to preach to myself to get rid of. A lot of self-limiting beliefs, a lot of toxic mentalities I had when I was coming up, and a lot of different things of that nature. I would probably say there's a lot of toxic mentalities out there for a lot of younger guys right now. Might be in a little bit different way than when I was younger. For me, I would say one of the things that I wouldn't say regret, but I definitely spent way too much time chasing women. You learn how to deal with women, deal with people in general when you're kind of communicating, and learn how to communicate a little bit better. But I did put too much effort into like women when I was younger. And I think it hit me in a lot of ways, actually, getting as I got older. And so I would say that's one thing. And one thing I would see nowadays is like, or at least on YouTube, because me and you are YouTubers, we kind of like peep out the YouTube landscape. There's a lot of people on YouTube who spend too much time. That's one thing I'm actually glad that they didn't have YouTube when I was younger, because they spend too much time in this digital world, and they start thinking that the digital world is reality versus the real world. And when I was younger, it was more so that you didn't have a choice but to be in the real world when you form your own opinions like that. But for any younger man out there, I would say spend more time in the real world than when consuming content, because you're doing yourself a disservice if you're consuming content all day and actually adopting other people's ideas instead of forming your own.
So in general, it seems like the stuff that you would give advice to yourself is more focused on delayed gratification, long-term stuff. So, and to end things off.
Also, one more thing I want to say is take risks, because when you're younger, I'm not saying take risks by like transporting dope to some place. I'm not saying that, because I grew up with a lot of people doing that type of stuff. And one of my best friends my best friend went to prison for drug stuff. But I would say take risks, like take risks on yourself, bet on yourself. Your number one investment in life is going to be on yourself. A lot of people will easily put $10,000 into some cryptocurrency that they don't even know what the utility is, or they'll put some $10,000 into a company where they know nothing about the CEO, or they don't know nothing about the way that the operation is going on, or they know nothing about a company that's got terrible employees. They'll gladly put $10,000 into a stock portfolio or something like that. Take that money and invest in yourself. Invest in your health, invest in your skill sets, invest in, all aspects of yourself. Invest in your own business. So take risks and invest in yourself.
And now, like, to end things off, since you've got all this stuff down, you got all these experiences, the knowledge, the wisdom and stuff like that, what are some plots, some projects, some plans that you got going on in the next coming couple of years? You know what I mean? Because you said we were talking about trying to open up a gym maybe, and trying to set up roots somewhere. So fill us in on what's next and stuff like that, and where we can find it at.
So what's next is going to be the Hybrid Athlete Gym. It might be a joint venture between me and somebody else, maybe James, if we do that, and maybe it's the High Octane Gym, but the Hybrid Athlete Gym is what I'm looking at next. And I'd actually like to get the ball rolling on that this year, to be honest with you. I've already started up on a business plan on that. And it's not necessarily just going to be a gym. What I want to do is create more of a lifestyle center and a place where people can come to have a co-working space, to a place where people can come to create artwork, a place where a high performers hub, basically, where people who are performing at a high level can come in and train at a high level. They can create at a high level. They can network at a high level. And this is something that I'm working on creating right now. And I've got a lot of ideas when it comes down to that. So if you guys are, are interested in that, subscribe to my channel, stay tuned on that, and I'll keep everybody updated. But that is the thing that I'm looking towards right now as far as my number one bigger goal, I would say. I've got a lot of smaller goals when it comes down to, different things I'm going to be doing online or different people I'm going to be connecting with. And, that's just my goal for right now. Eventually there'll be something different, but for that, and then as far as lifestyle goes, I think lifestyle is more important than money or material things. So I just want to put myself into an environment where I have a good lifestyle. I can get my training every day. I'm fulfilled as far as, being able to eat the type of food I want to eat every day, save time. I'm somebody who doesn't like commuting. I don't even really like driving, to be completely honest with you. So I want to be in an area that's very walkable. I can move. Weather is important to me. So all these things kind of factor into, my decision on where I want to be and what I want. And on top of that, it's like, I also have a girlfriend who I'm pretty serious with. So, that factors into my decisions as well. So.
Got you, man. That's pretty sick, bro. I'll be down to pull up to the High Octane or hybrid athlete gym, man. So where else can people find you? I know you got obviously YouTube, Instagram. You got anywhere else people can connect with you with?
You can go to my website and check out what I got going on there. It's hybridathlete.io. So if you guys are interested in training with me, or you're just interested in some of the stuff that I have going on and just want to check it out, or even want to book a free consultation with me, you can go to my website, hybridathlete.io. And then all my links to all my social medias are on there as well. So
yeah, I'll put in the description.
Yeah, for sure. So that's pretty much where you can find me at. And then hopefully we'll link up again and get another collaboration. We'll have
in person. Yeah, in person next time.
We definitely got to do that too, for sure. Get a training session. I like that. I like that home.
Oh yeah. Dude, there's some pretty nice calisthenics parks here too. There's like one that looks over like a nice canyon too. So if you ever pull up down here, bro, we'll get that link in. We can pull up to the home gym, or we can even go to the calisthenics park. That'd be tight.
Yeah, I'm down to do both.
Yes, sir. Let's get it, man. So it was great having you, bro. That was the first episode of the Fooladi Fitness Podcast. That was fun. That was fun, bro. Something I'm gonna keep doing. Hopefully, we get an in-person version of this soon. Yeah, but there it is, man. So appreciate you pulling up, chopping it up, dropping some game and all that stuff, man.
All right, man. I appreciate you having me.
Peace out, JD.
All right, man. Peace.
Have a good one.